Hello everyone, welcome to the editorial analysis of the Shankar IAS Academy brought to you by the Civilspedia team, and this is Abhinaya Sampath for today's editorial current affairs, and this video is for the editorial articles for the date of 18th of December 2024. Now let us see the topics for discussion. The first article titled The Constitution on Minority Rights from the Hindu discusses about the importance of minority rights for a country like India and their constitutional importance. And the second article titled Closing the Gulf Circle from the Indian Express talks about the importance of Gulf countries and India relationship when it comes to different sectors due to the PM's recent visit to Kuwait. Let us move on to the articles discussion one by one along with the mains question practice without any delay. Now moving on to the first news, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made his visit to Kuwait a first time in the 4 decades as an Indian Prime Minister, which marks the India's importance in the Gulf countries and overall Middle East region. So in light of this article, let us discuss about the India and Gulf countries in relation to different sectors. But before that, we need to know few facts on the map to understand this geopolitical scenario. But before that, let us discuss the mains question and let us move on to the article. Discuss the historical evolution of the India-Gulf relations and analyze the contemporary challenges and opportunities for India in the region. So let us see a framework of answer for this question. So this is a map of the Middle East. So first it comprises of the southern and eastern shores of the Mediterranean Sea and including the Arabian Sea and some parts of the Indian Ocean region, and along with it some part of the northern African is also included in the scenario of Middle East. So before the World War II, Middle East was given to British command military in Egypt, but later by mid 20th century the common Middle East states comprised of Turkey, Cyprus, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Israel, the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, then the Jordan, Egypt, Sudan and Libya. So these are the common Middle Eastern countries, and along with it the territories of Arabia countries included Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Yemen, Oman, Bahrain and Qatar. So the United Arab Emirates, that is the UAE, were initially called as trucial states, and then countries like Tunisia, Algeria and Morocco are closely somewhere connected in the sentiment and foreign policy within the Arab states. Also other geographical factors like the Afghanistan and Pakistan are also included in the account when it comes to Middle East affairs. Occasionally the parts of Greece is also included. So here looking into the historical context, Turkey and Greece were formerly known as Levant, as they were known to be as the Arabic speaking countries. So in 1821 they wanted to assert their independence of the Ottoman Empire. So Greece is also part of the Middle Eastern politics. Now we have seen the scenario of the Middle East. Now let us see in the Middle East there are formation of the Gulf countries. So they include again Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, Bahrain, Qatar and Kuwait. Here in the Gulf countries, Yemen is not part. So in the Gulf countries it is only 6 countries who are part of it. And the concept of moderate Arab states, that is those states which are diplomatically aligned with the West, are known as modern Arab states, and they are Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait and Oman. So I hope now we have a clear understanding of the mapping of the Middle Eastern countries, and now let us move on to the articles discussion. So first, looking into the historical context when it comes to Indian Gulf relations, during the pre-colonial time, the Indian subcontinent and the Arabian Peninsula were connected through trade links for items like spices, textiles and pearls, etc. And now during the post-colonial period, India's foreign policy emphasized on the non-alignment movement and also their interest for territorial sovereignty of the nations, and also their principle of non-interference and other geopolitical constraints. So let us have a few background about the non-alignment movement. So this was first conceptualized by India's first Prime Minister, that is by Jawaharlal Nehru, for the newly independent India. So the non-alignment movement or the NAM was formed in 1961 along with countries like Egypt, Yugoslavia, Indonesia, Ghana, where they founded the NAM in the Belgrade Conference. Here, the reason behind the formation of this movement was after the Cold War, the world was divided into two ideologies. That is, one is the US led Western Bloc, and next is the Soviet led Eastern Bloc. So, thus, to avoid taking any sides to maintain the relationship between countries, India took the stance of non alignment. So, the few principles or the objectives of non alignment would be having a strategic autonomy, having the principle of anti colonialism, anti imperialism, having the principle of global disarmament, economic cooperation, peaceful coexistence, and so on. So, when for a country like India, when they are involved in these non-alignment movements such as Gulf War or during 1990 to 1991 have affected India's relationship, as the Gulf War and Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait posed challenges for India's diplomacy. Thus, India was hesitant to outrightly condemn the Saddam's action due to their principle of non-alignment. And after 2000 onwards, especially under the Prime Minister Manmohan Singh government, there were opportunities to bring in increased economic, energy, and security ties, which was developed under GCC. So GCC is nothing but Gulf Countries Corporation, where it was formed by UAE, that is the United Arab Emirates, where their main focus is for economic cooperation. So even after this historical context, India struggled to match their engagement with the Gulf countries due to the rapid increase of regional dynamics. Now let us see the significance of the Gulf region for India through various sectors. First is the energy security. Here, almost 60% of the crude oil imports come from this region. So, the GCC is also main contribution for it, and in recent times, free trade agreement is also in talks between the India and the GCC. Here, almost this 60% of the crude oil imports coming from the Strait of Hormuz. Now, looking into the diaspora, over 9 million Indians reside in the Gulf region, contributing to the region's workforce. So, the remittances from these places are the major source of the foreign exchange as well as the FDI flows. Next is trade relations. Here, countries like UAE and Saudi are India's major trading partner. So, export markets for Indian goods like food, textile, pharmaceuticals is very much important by the Gulf countries. Now, looking into the strategical politics, here India as well as the Gulf countries are one of the crossroads of major trade route. Along with it, maritime security in the Arabian Sea and including the Indian Ocean brings in the Maritime Corporation, where it aims for security ultimately. For example, anti-piracy operations in the Arabian Sea and Gulf of Aden can be an example, and also Oman and Bahrain are under the Indian Ocean Region Security, that is the IOR. Now looking into the involvement of the moderate Arab states, here they are known to be one of the strategic partners for India in the Gulf region, as they counter the extremist ideologies and also they align with the counter terrorism issue. So not only about this reason, they are also involved in the possibility of increasing economic investment, defense partnership, and cultural exchange. That is, for example, we can bring in the idea of soft power, knowing about the Bollywood movies, Bollywood culture, bringing in Indian cuisines, and also the involvement of social media plays a great role for the cultural exchange. So here we can see a balance between the Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Israel by India, especially on these countries. India also accommodates the Palestinian concerns to avoid alienating the partners. Now we have seen the contribution of the Gulf countries in various sectors. Now let us move on to the challenges associated with it. First is the geopolitical rivalries like the competing Saudi Arabia and Iran, or Israel and the Arab states is a diplomatic challenge. Next is China's expansion through their Belt Road initiative can be seen as a global counterpower. The next challenge would be ensuring Indian workers' safety in the Gulf countries, having their concerns on the labor welfare. Next challenge can be seen as a regional instability like the Yemen crisis, proxy wars, risks, and which can hurt India's interest. And finally, having the challenge of energy transition here. Energy transition towards renewable energy makes reliance on the Gulf oil need to be more strategic. Thus, now we can see a way forward for the India's Gulf strategy. Here, first is to have a deeper engagement. For example, bringing in bilateral trade with the moderate Arab states can help in having a deeper engagement. Next is having a energy diversification. Here, we can collaborate for non-renewable projects, that is the long-term energy contracts, to reduce the dependency on the oil. Next, trade agreement like India, UAE, and Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or the CEPA, can are involved to boost exports. Thus, finally, in a larger perspective and in a larger picture, as a way forward, we can bring in the balancing of powers, that is, maintain strategic autonomy with countries like Iran, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and at the same time, finally protecting the major and larger interests. That is, major would be people and larger interest would be the countries. So, thus, it aligned with India's national as well as the international interest. So, I hope this article clearly defines India and Gulf's relationship. They are prehistorically, historically, as well as for the current times and relevance of the time. So now let us move on to the next article. Now moving on to the last article, the article titled The Constitution on Minority Rights. This article talks about recognizing the minority rights and how it is important for the survival of the democracy. By the UN General Assembly in 1992, December 18 is seen as the Minority Rights Day. So, not only through India but throughout the globe, this article emphasizes the importance of the rights of minority and their historical formation on why we need minority rights. So this article is a very simple read but a very important read when it comes to the recognition of minorities for a country like India as well as for the countries all around. As the famous US President Franklin Roosevelt have put down, democracies cannot thrive unless minorities are recognized and protected. So, in light of this article, we would be seeing the origin of minority rights, the contribution of our Indian Constitutional Assembly debates, few constitutional provisions when it comes to minority rights, key challenges involving in protecting the minority rights, having to see judicial interpretations, and relevance of minority rights in the modern India. So without any further delay, let's move into the article's discussion. Before that, let us see a mains question and we'll be seeing the framework of the answer to this question in coming slides. The constitutional safeguard for minorities in India are seen as a double-edged sword, ensuring protection yet allegedly fostering segregation. Discuss. Now looking into the historical background of the minority rights. Here, after World War I, the importance of safeguarding the minority rights was recognized internationally, particularly in Europe. So, peace treaties which included the provisions to protect minorities were formed in the newly formed nations after the World War I. The UN Declaration on Minority Rights through the UN General Assembly, where they adopted the declaration on the rights of persons belonging to national, ethnic, religious and linguistic minorities in 1992, gave affirmation for the recognition of minorities, as today is the Minorities Rights Day. Now moving to India's colonial legacy, here when it comes to India's historical context, During the British rule, India was a home to various religious, linguistic, and cultural minorities. The colonial government often followed a policy of divide and rule, which increased the communal differences. Thus, as the independence came in near, discussions on minority safeguards were integral part in framing our Indian constitution. Now, having a context on the historical importance of the recognition of minority rights, it led to the Constitutional Assembly debates. Here, the Constitution Assembly during the pre-era of independence, it extensively debated minority rights to address the concerns of largely marginalized communities. For example, Pandit J.B. Pant, that is Govind Ballabh, who is a former Minister of Home Affairs of India, moved the resolution to set up an advisory committee on fundamental rights and rights of minorities. And also at the same time, leaders like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel emphasized the equality and the need to safeguard to preserve minority identities. Here, minority rights were seen as an essential part to prevent majoritarianism and dominance and discrimination. So, thus, special provisions were added to protect the cultural, linguistic, and educational rights of the minorities. These provisions were aimed at improving the unity among the respecting of the diversity. Now, let us look into the constitutional provisions when it comes to minority rights. First one would be Article 29, where there is protection of cultural and educational rights. Here, it protects the rights of any section of citizens, not only just minorities, to conserve their distinct culture, language, and script. Thus, it ensures, for example, Tamil, Telugu, and other linguistic groups have established institutions to preserve their cultural heritage. Next is the Article 30, where it talks about rights of minorities to establish and administer educational institutions. Here, it gives religious and linguistic minorities the right to establish and manage educational institutions and choices on their own. Thus, the minorities can preserve their culture and promote education without any interference. So, in recent times, in 2024, a recent 7 judge bench case called Aligarh Muslim University of 2024 gave the rule by the Supreme Court that institutions under Article 30 cannot face excessive government regulations. So, again, Article 30 and their recent judgment brings in the importance of having recognition of the minority rights in spite of the interference from the state government. So, they should also maintain their minimum standards of education when it comes to Article 30. And now looking into Article 14 and 15, which is the right to equality, of course, and Article 15 prohibits discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. So, these articles ensure minorities are treated equally and not subjected to unfair practices. And it is not just for minorities, of course, it is for everyone out there of Indian citizen. Article 25 to 28 protects the religious freedom by allowing the individuals to practice, profess, and propagate their faith. Here, minorities can manage religious institutions without the state interference. And finally, Article 350A instructs the state to provide facilities for education of children in their mother tongue. And Article 350B establishes the post of Special Officer for Linguistic Minorities to monitor and address their grievances. Now, we have seen the constitutional provisions for the minority rights. Now, let us move on to the challenges associated with it. Here, first is having an ambiguity. Even in the article, it is given as the constitution does not clearly define the term minority. So, courts are often relying on the numerical strength, that is the number strength at the state or national level to identify minorities. For example, Hindus are a majority nationally but can be minorities in states like Punjab or Jammu and Kashmir. The next challenge would be having a majoritarian influence. Dominant groups sometimes or may impose their culture or religion on the minorities, leading to marginalization. Here, policies and laws are influenced by majoritarianism can threaten the minorities. Next is having an implementation gap. Even though the constitutional provisions exist, their implementation can be fallen short or sometimes can be poorly implemented. Thus, minority educational institutions sometimes face a lot of excessive regulation or biases, and this can ultimately lead to communal tensions. Here, religious and cultural differences result in tension, violations, and discrimination. Thus, it undermines the whole spirit of unity among diversity for a country like India and our constitutional values. So, in keeping the note of these challenges, let us see few judicial interpretation and safeguards in protecting the minority rights, which was given by the judiciary, of course. So, the first case would be the TMA Pi Foundation case of 2002, where it clarified that the rights of minorities to establish and administer educational institutions, and at the same time they upheld that the state cannot interfere excessively in managing these institutions. The next case would be Ahmedabad St. Xavier's College case of 1974. Here they affirmed that autonomy of the minority institutions under Article 30. And next would be for Kerala Education Bill case of 1958. Here they stressed that minority rights are essential for preserving diversity and democracy. So, looking into the challenges as well as the judicial interpretation, we can have an idea of how important or relevant the minority rights is present even in modern India. Minority rights ensure India's rich cultural, linguistic, and religious diversity, which can be preserved on promoting our diversity all above. Next is to bring an empowerment ultimately. Education is the key to change any society, and education would be the most free ideology ever. So, educational and culture almost are safeguarded to empower the minority communities to contribute to nation's growth, and especially for the community of women. And next is finally having a social harmony, that is the national interest of our country India. Here, recognizing and respecting minority rights increases unity, it reduces the communal tensions, and ultimately strengthens our democracy and keeping in touch with our constitutional values, which is the democracy ultimately. So I hope this topic is very simple topic, but it involves more interpretation and discussion on the perspectives when it comes to minority rights and our constitution role. So I kindly ask the aspirants to give in their ideologies or given their perspectives through the answer writing for the given questions for this article as well as the same article. And I hope now there is a clear understanding of these two articles. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to give a like, comment and share. And also at the same time, I initiate the aspirants to give in their mains answer practice in the comment section. And to further not to miss any other contents from our channel, subscribe to our channel. Thank you and have a nice day.